Hello, and welcome to episode 182 of the Compassion and Cucumbers podcast. I'm Christine.
And I'm Sam.
Here's what's coming up in today's show. In our Noteworthy segment, with RFK Jr. heading our Health and Human Services Department, what are his ideas for our food system, and are they realistic? We'll take a look at what he's calling the Make America Healthy Again campaign and his plans for the future of farming in the U.S.
And in our main topic, we're talking vegan advocacy. We'll go over some great ways to advocate for a cruelty-free world, and we'll let you know how not to influence people to go vegan.
But before we get into all that, here's what we do. We talk about what we've been up to, whether you like it or not. Well, we did something really fun.
We did.
Yesterday.
We got to go to Syracuse. We always love going to Syracuse.
To the Q's.
And visiting our Syracuse fam. And we got to see the final project presentation for our favorite 10-year-old on the planet, Quillen Capello.
Yeah, our favorite young vegan advocate and artist, Quillen Capello. He is a brilliant artist and articulate speaker, and he had a reception for his show that has been hanging at the Brett's Library there in Syracuse. Wonderful show. He's got a ton of beautiful works that he's painted, and each came with a wonderful card explaining the motivation behind the painting, what it means to him, what inspired it. And he went through each painting for a pretty large crowd of people. And
there were at least 30 people there. Yeah.
Yeah. And did a wonderful job explaining what each piece was and what it meant to him and what his inspirations were. So, Quillen, we just have to say, I am constantly blown away by the things you do and say.
Yes. I could not agree more. And I have to say, I had the singular pleasure of watching Quillen play Portal 2.
Oh, yeah, on PlayStation?
On his Wii U.
Oh, it's on Wii.
Oh, wait, no. It was on PlayStation.
Yeah, I think
You're
that's a
right.
PlayStation
That was a
game.
PS3. And so I was watching Quillen play Portal 2, which was really pretty amazing. I'd never seen it before.
Yeah, me
never
neither.
seen the game before. But it's a massive logic puzzle. And he was just so skilled at finding the answers to each puzzle, finding how to progress through each room. It was really incredible.
It was impressive.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
But of course, every time he biffed it, we then had a pillow fight.
Yeah, I was in the dining room with all of the adults, and there was just raucous laughter coming from the room where they were playing. So I went in there to see what was going on, and they're beating each other with pillows. I'm like, okay. I thought you were in here playing video games, but okay. I like that you added a physical element to it.
Yes, it was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Yes. And, so he'd be, tossing blocks through the room with these little launcher things, and he's trying to
in the
use
game.
the game, and he's trying to use this little gun to create portals to send the blocks through. And I just kept telling him, hey, cute, don't biff it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really popular game.
Yeah, and it was just
Portal.
really fun.
Yeah.
But then when he did biff it, pillow fights ensued.
Pillow fights.
Yes. And Gollum was involved. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
There was a lot going on there.
It was just amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
But thank you so much to our hosts, Jacqueline and Ian Capello in Syracuse, and for all the lovely food.
Oh my gosh, the food.
Yeah, and for hosting us and letting us stay over because we're older and we don't like to drive at night. And so it was just a wonderful day filled with some really incredible people. And we always enjoy our time spent with the Syracuse vegan community that we have up there.
Yes.
And it just warms my heart.
And this morning, I had the great privilege of going through the journal that Quillen kept of all of his educational explorations this year.
Yeah.
And it was just phenomenal. Just in the terms of, like, first of all, where he is mathematically, where he is in terms of speech and writing, where he is in terms of his artistic development, the things that he's learning that are combining ecology and history and civics. And it's just amazing. The incredible connections that can be made through homeschooling that are not necessarily made in the standardized public school system.
It can be tailored to, each kid's
interests,
specific
and
interests,
strengths.
Yeah.
It's really just incredible what they're able to do. And I was looking at this and completely geeking out because I was just like, oh my God, I wish that my early education had been like this.
Yeah.
Like, this is amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty inspirational, and it did make you wish you had that experience when you were learning.
Yeah. But just the incredible amount of work that both Quillen and his mom, Jacqueline, put into this process is just, it's really inspiring.
Yeah, it's homeschooling done right. It really is.
Yeah.
And so, Quillen, we're proud of you.
We really, really
are. We are so proud of you.
We just think you're amazing.
Yeah, and you didn't biff it.
You did not biff it.
Yeah.
And then, so after we looked at Q's journal this morning, we then, started to head home. And our first stop was to Sweet Praxis to get some croissants, to get some pastries to bring home.
They make some pretty incredible vegan pastries.
They really do. So we got some regular croissants and some almond croissants and some chocolate croissants and some limoncello Danish. I'm really looking forward to some of these. Yes, like just crazy. And then, of course, we had to stop at our favorite Syracuse spot. Nice biscuit.
Nice biscuit.
Yes.
Yeah, wow. They are, to borrow a phrase, really taking care of the biscuits.
Oh, yes. Yes.
It's so good. Their breakfast sandwiches are to die for.
They really are. And today, the biscuits were especially tasty.
They were.
And the sandwiches...
Maybe they had just come out of the oven or something, but they were just crisp and fluffy. And,
they were perfect.
Yeah.
So even though they're phenomenal on any given day, they were just a tiny bit more so today for some reason.
Particularly good today.
And the sandwiches were assembled absolutely beautifully. Like, I could not fit the entire sandwich in my face.
Oh, you can't. No, you can't. They're
you just
big.
can't. They're too big.
Yeah.
But oh my God, it was so good. And having the Trailblazer with all of the combinations of spices between the sausage and the pepper jack cheese and the dang sauce and the jalapenos. Oh my God.
So good. I know you've heard us.
Yummy.
I know you've heard us talk about Nice Biscuit a number of times. But if you're ever in the central New York area, detour your way to Nice Biscuit in Syracuse, because you will not regret it.
You will not regret it.
Yeah.
It is truly a don't miss.
They're so
spot.
good. So good.
So good.
We have anything else to talk about in the what we've been up to kind of situation?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's just been, this is my crazy work time.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to work tonight after we finish recording this.
Yeah.
So no, we're not doing a whole heck of a lot outside of the Syracuse trip.
Yeah. It was a good time.
It was a great time.
I'm so glad that we could make it there.
Yes, me too.
So let's just move on to our Noteworthy segment, shall we?
Let's do it.
Like we said at the top of the show, in our Noteworthy segment, we're going to be taking a little look at what old RFK Jr. is doing for the health of America. And is he making America healthy again?
So this is coming from the Kiowa County Press. This is Southeast Colorado News through Sentient Media. Now that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has kicked off his Make America Healthy Again, or MAHA commission, food system advocates are wondering which of his ideas will come to fruition. One promise was to revamp the food system with a plan to, quote, reverse 80 years of farming policy. But what exactly would it mean for the average American to eat like we did in the 1940s? Experts tell Sentient the reality was not as idyllic as Kennedy and his supporters might believe. It's also not at all feasible, as it would require the U.S. to make drastic changes to the way we eat. To put it bluntly, Americans would have to eat much less meat.
Yeah, and I am finding this is true about a lot of his policies, that they're dreams, okay? They're mostly unattainable, and a lot of them are just sound bites.
Yes. And I believe that he is aware that given the current culture in the United States, the incredible meat-forward culture that has existed in the United States since the end of World War II and has just ballooned incredibly in the past 20 years.
Yeah.
I really don't think he believes that these things are possible.
Right. Yeah, it does seem like a lot of just lip service, right?
Sure. So let's take a look at the way we ate meat 80 years ago. At first blush, the historical picture does sound like locavore heaven. Food systems were still mostly regional. Food historian Sarah Wastberg Johnson tells Sentient, people living in rural areas were more likely to have access to their own fresh produce, to drink dairy from their own cow, and to can their foods for the winter. The typical middle-class family would eat very Anglo-influenced foods, Wastberg Johnson says, like meat and potatoes and vegetables. But back then, meat tended to be beef or pork, as chickens were considered a delicacy. That would all change after the birth of the industrial poultry farm, which kicked off the era of cheap and abundant chicken. Dig a little further into the history, and you quickly realize that the amount of meat consumed then was far less than what most people eat today. The average American only ate around 113 pounds of meat in 1945, less than half of the nearly 230 pounds of meat consumed annually today per capita.
That is an incredible figure. Can we just stop there for a second?
Yes, we can.
So even the 113 pounds that people were eating in 1945, that is, wow, that's a lot.
Well,
but
if you
now it's 230 pounds of meat consumed per person?
Yes. If you take that 113 pounds and you kind of put that into 365 days a year,
sure,
that's a little bit less than 1/3 of a pound of meat per person per day.
Yeah.
So we're looking at maybe 5 ounces.
Right. So we're talking about the era of like the Victory Garden, where people were growing their own food and eating mostly a produce and plant-based diet with the rare occasion of meat, right?
Yes. And now, you kind of think of, so we're looking at just over 1/3 of a pound, thinking about 16 ounces to a pound. Yeah. So if the average daily consumption per person was 5 ounces per person per day.
Okay.
But now we have kind of the standard of either the 1/4 pound or 1/2 pound hamburger. So that's either 8 ounces or 4 ounces in one meal, not including, for example, the bacon that one might have for breakfast, plus the burger you have at lunch, plus the chicken you have at dinner.
Right.
So we're talking closer to 3/4 of a pound of meat per person per day.
Per day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It is incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Now, back in the 40s, meats were usually prepared in dishes designed to feed more people with less meat. Home cooks incorporated them into sauces, stews, and casseroles. The quintessential American food, meatloaf, is typical of this practice of meat stretching. You're taking ground beef, which is already the cheapest meat, and you're stretching it with onions and breadcrumbs, egg, or milk. So you're trying to stretch a pound of beef to feed more than 4 people, Wastberg Johnson says. People also ate more meat alternatives, even if they weren't called that at the time.
Right.
Grains, nuts, and beans were common sources of protein. Following the war, dry bean consumption in the U.S. was around 11 pounds per capita annually, compared to just 5.5 pounds per capita in 2023. So while meat consumption has more than doubled alternative protein consumption has fallen by half.
Yeah. People eat more beans.
Beans, grains, nuts, seeds.
So good.
Come on, people. Americans were encouraged to grow victory gardens to help supplement the national food supply, and beans were an important crop, including soybeans, which were sometimes called wonder beans or miracle beans. And yet, the transition to an industrialized food system was already underway. There's a lot of romanticization of food production in the past, says Wasberg Johnson. A lot of people are like, oh, if we only ate how Grandma ate, everything would be better. But even then, she says, there was heavy dependence on things like railroads for food transport and access, and processed foods like flour, cornmeal, sugar, and canned goods. Americans ate less meat back then, and we produced less meat, too. In 1945, prior to the rise of factory farming, there were just under 6 million farms in the United States, with each operation ringing in at a little less than 200 acres in size, on average. Contrast that with 2024. Researchers counted 2 million farms in the U.S., but the average size is much larger, at about 464 acres. Over the decades, farms have become more consolidated. Smaller farms merged or went out of business, and larger, more industrialized operations flourished. The massive growth in industrialized farming was made possible by technology that didn't exist 80 years ago, such as synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, farms that focused on 1 or 2 commodity crops, and concentrated animal farming operations, or CAFOs. These developments enabled the U.S. food system to produce massive amounts of cheap meat, primarily chicken, that consumers happily gobbled up. Industrial poultry operations were first developed in the 1950s. Around 275 million chickens were raised for meat in 1946 in the United States. By 2023, that number skyrockets to 9.16 billion.
Wow. Yeah, that's insanity. 9.16 billion.
So multiply the 275 million by 4 to get slightly more than a billion.
Mm-hmm.
And multiply that by 9. So we're talking 28 times.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes progress is not a good thing.
It's approximately 28 times. That's nuts.
It's insanity.
Yes.
It's complete and utter insanity.
Is. And of course, all of that cheap meat is not without other costs. Today, 99% of farm animals are raised on factory farms or industrial operations with cramped quarters for dairy cows, chickens, and pigs. The beef that Americans eat at higher rates than the global average fuels climate pollution and deforestation. CAFOs and slaughterhouses are responsible for polluted air and water and worker injuries and poor mental health. So why not trade factory farming for the good old days of American food, small-scale farms, and the agricultural policies of 80 years ago? Sentient asked American agriculture historian and professor at Purdue University, R. Douglas Hurt, whether RFK Jr.'s proposal is at all realistic. Of course not, Hurt says. And here's why. To turn the U.S. food system back into the small-scale style farming of the early 20th century would be extremely costly for farmers and consumers alike. Small farms, Hurt explains, historically have not provided enough income to keep farmers on the land. Farmers needed hundreds of acres to generate a profit and an acceptable standard of living, with very few exceptions, like a high-value specialty crop such as avocados. Small-scale farms, like hobby farms or the homesteads you see on social media, might provide an alternative lifestyle, says Hurt, but they usually aren't profitable. To be profitable, the money must come from sources other than free-range chickens, eggs, and a few grass-fed beef cattle. Quantity of production matters.
I think that's kind of the heart of a matter here when they're talking about growing your food being a profitable
Yes.
endeavor.
That's right.
That's the problem.
It is the problem.
Right there. It should not be growing your food for profit.
That's right.
if you really want to fantasize, and we go back to everybody growing their own food, they didn't grow it for profit. They grew it for sustenance.
That's right.
Right. And then if you had leftovers, or you had, say, too many tomatoes, which anybody that's had a garden knows,
you wind up with too many tomatoes.
Yeah, then maybe you might open a farm stand at the end of your road or something like that, and try to recoup a little bit of what you put into growing that produce.
To revert back to small farms, says Hurt, the federal government will need to subsidize those farmers in order for them to make a living. This will be very expensive. Now, the thing is, that's happening already.
Right. We'll need to subsidize farmers. Yeah, we already
do subsidize
farmers to the tune of billions of dollars.
Yes, we do. So the idea that subsidy will just need to grow, perhaps exponentially, is incredibly problematic.
Yeah.
It also might be pretty unappealing. The good old days, they were terrible, Hurt says. Farming is hard work. That's why so many people leave it if they can for a better job and more money. So what if we all turned into subsistence farmers and grew our own food? Some people are trying to do just that, as I reported on last year, but many learned in the process that raising and butchering their own animals was far more difficult than they had hoped. For some nascent homesteaders, instances of butchery gone awry turned out to be cruel to the animals and upsetting for them. Oh my God.
Yeah, if you want to eat animals and you want to grow your own animals, and I'm putting that in air quotes, if you want to bring animals into existence merely to slaughter them so that you can eat them, you do have to remember the fact that you have to do that.
Yes.
Unless you send them off to a butcher or whatnot. And that is a gruesome thought, right?
That is gruesome, yes. There's yet another reason why switching from industrial factory farms to small farms would be a disaster, and it's environmental. Even if we were to only focus on transitioning beef to an all grass-fed approach, at current rates of beef consumption, that would require far more land and resources than we have. In 2018, environmental scientists Matthew Hayek and Rachel D. Garrett found that a nationwide shift to exclusively grass-fed beef would require increasing the national cattle herd from 77 million to 100 million cattle, an increase of 30%. But there simply isn't enough pasture available.
That kind of goes back to the greenwashing that takes place within the grass-fed community, where what they don't tell you is that so much land use is happening because of grass-fed beef.
Yes.
So much forest is being leveled
yes.
for grass-fed beef, and so much biodiversity is lost. So it's not a feasible way to go about it.
But there is one way to shift to much smaller farms. And that's if we were to drastically reduce how much meat we eat. A transition to a plant-based food system could save an estimated 24% of total land use and feed around 700 million people, which is double the current population of the United States.
Yeah.
This doesn't seem to line up with the way Americans still want to eat meat, and it's a far cry from the approach RFK Jr. and his MAHA acolytes are championing. A recent interview on Fox News took place over burgers at a fast food chain, one that had apparently agreed to stop serving seed oils. Even if current trends have made RFK Jr.'s plans for taking the food system back in time sound appealing, his ideas are simply not going to play out that way in reality.
No, and before we started recording this episode, we were talking about how so many of the things that RFK Jr. says sound like good ideas.
Well, I had just seen a YouTube clip with RFK Jr. talking about his plans for shifting 80 years of farming policy and talking about how we have basically an endemic situation of chronic disease in this country that is largely propelled by processed food. He's not wrong. That is absolutely a truthful statement.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
It's unarguable. That is absolutely true. But the way he views altering the current food system is not feasible.
It's not based in reality at all.
No, it's not. And it's also not based on making people healthier.
Right.
He's advocating for consumption of meat, not only what we currently consume, but even perhaps more than we currently consume. And to do so in a way that is even more environmentally devastating than our current system.
Right. Yeah, it's just lip service to me. I mean, I think he just says things. He just says things that he thinks people are going to go, hey, yeah, you know, he's right. And that's a good idea. But most of it is not based in reality.
No.
And then he will turn around and say something so completely off the wall, you know, some anti-vax stuff. Or I just read a thing today where he wants to make ivermectin available over the counter, which I'm not sure if you remember, but during the first Trump presidency, Trump was telling people to take ivermectin to battle COVID. And ivermectin is a horse medicine. So, yeah, it's like he says one thing that sounds like it makes sense, and then he says another thing out of the other side of his mouth that is completely insane.
Well, yes. I mean, and he's been talking about, you know, making food natural again. But his idea of that is taking on things like red food dye. Okay, I can get behind that.
Sure.
Ultra processed foods. I can get behind that too.
Sure.
But also seed oils.
Right. The seed oil, the anti-seed oil thing, I don't get it.
Right.
I really don't get it.
And while he's doing that, he's promoting the consumption of tallow.
Right.
Raw milk.
Right.
Unpasteurized raw dairy.
Absolutely.
And grass-fed beef.
Yeah. I'm convinced that the whole, not to get too far into the weeds here, but I'm convinced that the whole banning red dyes and stuff like that and saying that, you know, that there is a link between these food additives and childhood instances of ADHD and autism and a number of other things is just fodder for this registry that he wants to make for people with autism, which is a wow, Joseph Mengele type situation. I would, if you are listening and you have anybody in your family that has autism, do not register.
No.
If this happens, ever register any member of your family into any sort of registry. Now, I mean, if they bypass HIPAA laws, which why wouldn't they? They bypass every other law. That information is available to people if they can get into, you know, medical computer systems and create their own list that way if they want. But I'm convinced that all of this anti-food additive thing is just kind of a way for him to steer into that.
Yeah.
And it really makes me nervous.
A lot of his push towards single ingredient natural foods has also created a rise, particularly on the political right, of the carnivore diet.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, the carnivore diet emphasizes eating only animal-based foods. So it is the absolute inverse of a vegan or plant-based diet. And some meat-fluencers, the idea that there are people who are called meat-fluencers is really terrifying
That's
to me.
frightening.
Says it means eating like our ancestors.
What ancestors? Seriously?
Yes.
Ooh, what ancestor?
This stems from false assumptions that our ancestors primarily consumed animal products and that human physiology is optimized for a meat-based diet,
Right.
which it is not. Our ancestors really followed an omnivore diet, but even that's not true. It was primarily a herbivore-frugivore diet with, when you had gained some wealth and status, meat.
Right.
Meat was reserved for the wealthy It was not the food of the common people.
Right. I mean, are these people talking about the caveman diet?
I guess. I don't know.
Are they talking about, going out and nabbing yourself a woolly mammoth and
Right.
living off of that for a winter?
I don't know.
Is that what they're talking about?
I don't know.
As far as ancestors go.
Well, but regardless, the carnivore diet has become increasingly politicized as a fad of the right, encompassing aspects of hypermasculinity and white nationalism.
So yeah, that is insane that they're pushing the carnivore diet on the right. I mean, I guess it tracks.
Sure, it does.
With the hyper masculinity and stuff that kind of runs rampant in that crowd. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
But let us just go back to the fact that if you're really looking at natural, single ingredient, unprocessed foods, raw fruits and vegetables, friends.
Right.
That's what we're looking at right there.
Yeah.
Because everything else has a certain degree of processing to it, even our grains.
Yeah, I mean, things have to be processed. And the word processed doesn't necessarily mean something's bad.
That's right.
It just means you took it from its original form and turned it into something edible.
That's right.
Right?
Yes.
So, yeah, RFK Jr., he frightens me. The fact that he was approved to be involved in our government in any capacity, while not surprising, it just blows my mind.
Right. Well, of course not, because, he gave money and he gave endorsements.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Qualifications mean nothing.
Yeah. But it's funny because he I don't know if he panders. He says things that make sense and then the next day he's saying something completely insane, or if he is just really completely insane and has what he thinks are good ideas. I don't know. I don't trust the man, frankly.
Oh, heavens no.
Yeah.
No. His own family doesn't trust him.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so my advice would be to take everything that RFK Jr. says with a salt block, not even a grain of salt. Because he, in my opinion, is certifiable. He says some really wacky stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Didn't he say that he had brain worms in his brain or something? There's definitely something going on there with him. Mm-hmm. He's not in his right mind.
Right.
And I've heard him say some really crazy stuff. He's given terrible advice about how to handle things like the measles outbreak. Yep. And anyway, RFK Jr. is not going to save our food system.
No.
And he is not going to eliminate factory farming.
No, absolutely not. So, if you've heard him talking about, reverting to smaller farms and different means of production, he has no intention of getting rid of factory farming. No, absolutely not. He does think of increasing grass-fed beef operations. Mm-hmm. But again, in terms of resources, it's just not possible.
No, it's impossible. It's impossible. It's all lip service. So,
yeah.
I think that we've said all that we can say about that. And I'm sure when we revisit it as RFK Jr. says more crazy stuff.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Where, as far as our food system is concerned.
You bet.
So let's move on to our main topic. This week's main topic is the best and the worst of vegan advocacy. So we're going to give you some best practices and best vegan advocacy approaches, and then we'll tell you maybe what not to do.
So right at the top of the list of the best vegan advocacy approaches, and honestly, I believe that this is the way to start for any kind of communication and any kind of advocacy. Mm-hmm. It's not just a vegan thing. It's an everything thing.
Okay.
Is positive, empathetic communication.
Yeah.
Why does this work? Well, it meets people where they are. So you're not asking them to come to you. You're meeting them. It builds trust between people and it invites curiosity without judgment. Mm-hmm. For example, If you are sharing a delicious plant-based meal, stories about your own personal health transformations, or compassionate stories about animals, that's going to be far more intriguing than kind of telling someone you should go vegan and here's why.
Right.
Yeah. And a good tactic here is to say, here's what helped me. Maybe it can help you too.
Yeah, leading by example is always, leading by example and being empathetic to other people is always the best tactic, right?
Yeah, it's never a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Centering food and culture is a good tactic. And here's why that works. Because food is emotional and cultural. And showing how veganism fits into diverse traditions makes it accessible and inclusive.
Oh, yeah. This is huge.
Yeah. I think we may have talked about it, but when we first went vegan, one of the first things I did was try to veganize some of the cultural dishes as an Italian that I grew up with.
Yeah.
Which Italian food, really easy to veganize.
Yes.
Okay. When you're talking about pasta dishes and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that makes a huge difference if you have, say like in my case, you have an Italian family and you make, like I do, or like my nephew does, an incredible vegan lasagna.
Oh my gosh.
And people can go, oh, we can have the things that we grew up with.
We can have the things that we love.
Yeah, we can hold on to those food traditions and not, cause any cruelty.
Yes.
This is great. So also there's huge amounts of vegan versions of soul food, Latin dishes, Indian food.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right?
Yeah. Thai curries and stir fries and just about just about every ethnic food is pretty easy to veganize.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
except for like the standard American diet. Not that that's really an ethnic food. But,
it's not. I don't consider that to be ethnic.
But some people might consider that to be their tradition.
And it is cultural, certainly. I wouldn't call it ethnic, but it is definitely cultural.
Yeah.
Yes. And the only problem there is that it's easily replicated, but it's easily replicated through a lot of hyper processed food.
Yeah, meat replacers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what's the tactic here is you're celebrating the food rather than talking about what's restricted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that vegan advocates can make is to talk about what you can't have.
You're right.
Like, no. Let's not worry about the can't. Let's talk about what you can have.
Right.
And let's talk about the things that are available that can, if you feel the need, mimic the things that you love to eat.
Yeah. So if like a non-vegan says to you, if you're in conversation with them and they're like, yeah, but what can't you have? Like just shut that down and say, oh, I don't think about it like that. Here's what I do eat though,
For sure. Absolutely. It's also a good idea to make sure any information that you're giving is both educational and evidence-based. We love evidence. Evidence is awesome. So facts resonate with certain audiences, and I would say with most audiences, especially when shared calmly and clearly. So, for example, talk about the environmental impact of animal agriculture using data from the IPCC or peer-reviewed studies. Talk about the nutritional aspects of veganism and cite all of the vegan doctors, cardiologists, etc., who have done the research to prove that veganism is the healthiest diet.
Yeah, I mean, the science
is there.
Yeah,
exactly. And when you get into this kind of stuff, you don't need to preach. So you can get off your soapbox and just say, here's the information. This is where to find it.
Yeah, here's the factual information.
Go read it.
Here's the sources that back up the information I'm giving you. Take it in.
Yeah.
And see what you think.
So you can provide a wealth of information without coming across as a preachy vegan.
Yeah, you don't want to be preachy.
Nah.
Leading by example, come on. What better way to convince somebody of anything than just by living your life and leading by example, right? So
I'm with you.
Why this works is it's non-confrontational and it inspires people. Mm-hmm. When people see someone thriving in a vegan lifestyle, they get curious, why are you 60 and don't look 60?
Mm-hmm.
Talking about myself.
Of course you are.
I mean, at least I don't think I look 60.
I don't think you do either.
I mean, it's certainly not because of the way I treated my body when I was younger.
That's for sure.
So, I think maybe I've tried to slow that aging process a little bit, or maybe not tried to, but maybe have inadvertently done that by becoming a vegan, and people might be curious about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like vegan athletes are a good example, right? Chefs are a good example. Doctors that are vegan.
I'm going to throw teachers in there.
Teachers that are vegan, and the people, vegans that are just living our lives and crushing it. Right?
Are we crushing it?
I think we're crushing it.
All right, then.
Yeah.
Okay. In other words, be the vibe.
Be the vibe.
Yes.
Yeah, that sums up that tactic.
Yes.
Really well.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about some of the worst vegan advocacy approaches.
Yeah, these are some things you might not
to
want
avoid.
to do.
Yeah, and again, these are things that you don't want to do in general.
No.
They're not just related to veganism. So number one is shaming and guilt tripping.
Yeah.
I really don't think I need to say that this backfires because it makes people defensive.
Mm-hmm.
No one likes to feel that they're being attacked or that they're being perceived as morally inferior.
Right.
We have to remember that everyone has the absolute right to make their own choices.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to approve of those choices, but we cannot infringe on another's right to make those choices.
Yeah, you can say you don't agree.
That's right. But you can do it in a way that isn't going to raise their hackles and make them defensive.
Mm-hmm.
For example, don't tell someone they're a murderer if they eat meat.
Yeah.
I mean, yikes. That's seriously, massively confrontational.
Yeah.
And while we may hold that belief, that's not productive.
Not at all.
In any way.
Right.
Because the only thing that happens is they stop listening to you.
Yeah.
Because they're just going to see your point of view as being extreme.
Sure.
And they're not going to want to listen anymore.
Just to put this into perspective, like say, for instance, a Donald Trump voter was screaming in your face about Donald Trump.
Uh-huh.
Is that going to convince you to listen to anything that Donald Trump has to say?
That'd be a no.
Or even to anything that particular person has to say?
No, I'm done. I'm walking away.
Exactly. You stop listening. You shut them down.
That's
the
right.
minute somebody says woke about anything, I walk away.
That's right. Yes.
So yeah, being confrontational like that is not a good tactic.
Yeah.
Graphic or traumatizing imagery without the consent of the people that you're showing it to
Most definitely.
is a huge no-no in my book, right? And why it's harmful. I mean, telling the truth is crucial, right? We don't want to pussyfoot around what's happening in factory farming, but unsolicited trauma will definitely alienate or re-traumatize people.
Without question.
Yeah.
I mean, I've admitted many times that I can't get past the first 5 minutes of Dominion.
Right.
I can't. I literally cannot do it. And so to subject somebody else to that
Yeah, why?
is just cruel.
Right.
If they say, yes, I'm interested in seeing this,
Yeah.
that's a completely different story.
Yeah.
But to just say, here, look at this.
Yeah.
And then subject them to the first 5 minutes of Dominion, no.
Here's an example, like showing slaughterhouse footage in public spaces without a warning. I don't buy that as a good form of advocacy
No,
at
I don't
all.
either.
There are ways to do it. I do think that Anonymous for the Voiceless does a pretty good job, but We the Free does it in a perfect fashion where they have booths set up and offer free food, usually donut sweets of some kind.
Because who doesn't want sweets?
Yeah, vegan donuts, they don't tell them they're vegan, but they're
course not.
vegan donuts, vegan cookies, whatever. Agree to watch this horrible, I think they say it's like horror footage. Agree to watch 3 minutes of horror footage and get yourself some free donuts.
Yeah,
And people will take the challenge.
of course.
But then they have people standing with them, walking them through the footage. They're
Right.
not just showing it to them and not providing a support system there.
Right.
You don't want to traumatize people and then just let them walk away.
Yeah.
Right. So I think they do it right. There is a way to do it, but you do not want to just show traumatizing graphic footage of animal abuse to people without their consent.
Of
right?
course not.
You can use trigger warnings. and you can direct people to opt in to watch it, like We the Free does. So,
and I really do like that they're inviting people in.
Yeah.
You know, and they're offering something in return. Like, this is going to be an unpleasant experience.
Right.
But if you are willing to go through it, there is something positive on the end. And that's not just the vegan treat. It's not just about the donut or the cupcake or the muffin or whatever that they're giving. It's also the conversation.
It's a supportive conversation
that
afterwards.
comes afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. We the Free, they've got it going on.
Yeah. What happens is, as they're talking about what was happening to the animals on the footage, they're also talking about, you know, the trauma that the person watching it had to go through. So, you know, they can put those two things together. If this animal was traumatized in the footage you see, and you were traumatized watching that, you know, I think it's just a really good way to reach people.
I agree.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
We also want to avoid purity politics and vegan policing.
Yeah.
There is enough division in this world.
We don't need gatekeepers.
We do not need gatekeepers. We do not need to further divide communities, especially communities who are united around a specific cause, a specific ideal. It's just counterproductive. So anyone who is ever claiming perfection,
right,
or mandating that you can't call yourself vegan unless you are perfect.
Right. Right.
I would run screaming in the other direction, seriously. So if you hear you're not really vegan if you don't boycott every single brand with a problematic parent company.
Yeah.
Or you're not really vegan if you're using that lip balm that has beeswax in it that you were gifted for Christmas 5 years ago.
Right.
Or you're not really vegan if you feed your obligate carnivore companion animal an animal product.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We have to remember that the central tenet of veganism is to avoid, as much as is practicably possible, the use and exploitation of animals in food, clothing, other types of commodities, and entertainment.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it goes back to the meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, you see a lot of this gatekeeping mostly online.
Yeah.
Where someone will post, oh, you know, I just had some Just Egg and I loved it. I never had it before and it was great. And then somebody else will go, oh, you know, they tested on animals. You know, they tested the product on animals. And, you know, whether or not that is true, why shut that person down?
Right.
That is trying, you know, that isn't eating chicken eggs and they're trying. Why shut them down like that?
Yeah.
It's so counterproductive.
It is.
You know?
Yeah. It just turns people off. It pushes them away.
Absolutely. And
we lose allies.
Actually, I have seen
by doing
time and time again online where that will happen. And then somebody else will post, this is why I want to leave these groups because everybody is so gatekeepy and
judgy.
And everybody's so judgy and everybody thinks they're a perfect whatever. You know, and I really, you know, I know online is not real life and people for some reason, you know.
I'm really glad you know that. I'm so glad to hear you say that.
I'm just saying, I think if somebody, you know, had that conversation with the same person on the bus, you know, if it was a stranger sitting next to him on the bus and that stranger was talking to their friend and said, hey, I tried Just Egg. Have you ever tried it? It was really good. And, you know, I'm trying to eat a more of a plant-based diet and I'd really like to go vegan because it aligns with my ethics. Would you lean over your bus seat and say, hey, you know, I heard they tested on animals before it became commercially available?
No, I would not. I would be more likely to lean over the seat and say, hey, you know, isn't Just Egg awesome? Yeah. I am vegan.
And kudos to you for trying.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's great that you're trying.
Yeah.
You know, I've been vegan for 7 years. Is there anything you'd like to ask? Is there anything I can help you with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing, that gatekeeping and having to be right and perfect vegan thing.
It's nonsense.
It is a terrible, terrible way to encourage people to go vegan. Another terrible way is over-promising, which you see a lot of this, especially with like influencers and stuff.
Over-promising seems to be the way of the world anymore.
Yeah, like veganism cures everything, right?
Yeah.
So why is that a terrible way to convince people to go vegan? And why? Because it's misleading, right? It oversimplifies complex issues and can erode trust. Veganism is not going to cure anything except cruelty.
Right. Yes. That is absolutely true.
Right.
But every situation, every person is different.
Sure.
And if everybody in the world flipped a switch and went vegan overnight, would all of the world's problems be solved? Absolutely not.
No.
Would it be a great step in the right direction? You betcha.
Yeah. Would people perhaps be healthier in the long run? 100%.
Yes.
Is it going to cure what ails you? Most likely not.
No.
You know, are you never going to get sick again because you're vegan?
No.
No.
Because, hey, guess what? The last time we said, hey, we haven't gotten sick in a long time, we both got sick.
We both got sick.
Like immediately afterwards. It was like Mama Nature was going, that's funny, you
Oh,
two.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So always be honest about what you feel are the benefits of going vegan, at least health-wise and all that, and what the challenges are of being vegan. You know, don't candy coat it.
That's right.
And don't overpromise.
That's right. In other words, with all of this, I think it's just a matter of just be real.
Yeah. Keep it real.
Just keep it real.
Keep it real. Don't be judgy. Don't be preachy. Don't gatekeep about anything.
That's right. Just be kind. Be supportive. Be
Yeah.
generous.
Yeah, because what it comes down to, right, veganism is to be compassionate,
That's right.
to be empathetic, and, you know, just to try to be a good person. And I think you will find that you will not have to convince people if you treat people with compassion. You know?
Yeah.
You won't be sitting there preaching. You won't be convincing. You'll be giving them the information that you have.
And then allowing them to make their own choices.
You'll be leading by example how your life is, and people have to make their own choices. Right?
Yeah.
So I hope that's helpful if you're out in the world, or if you feel like you want to advocate a little more for veganism. There's just a few ways that you can advocate that are like proven to be more effective, and some ways that you want to stay away from.
And there you have it.
Now it's time for our Assignment Restaurant SOS.
This week, we are looking at one of my favorites, and that is PS Kitchen. Dedicated to harnessing the potential of eco-friendly cuisine and a compassionate approach, PS Kitchen's mission is to serve their clients, employees, society, and the earth with utmost care. They join forces with social ventures and charitable endeavors to advance the causes of justice and kindness, both locally and worldwide. Their partnerships reflect a threefold commitment: to create jobs for the marginalized in New York City, to donate 100% of their profits to sustainable nonprofit work, and to provide New Yorkers with delicious dishes that are kind to the body and to the earth.
PS Kitchen, which is located in New York City, is a wonderful little restaurant.
Yes, and to be very specific, it is located at 246 West 48th Street in New York. And we had a meal there a little over a year ago when we took our trip to New York to see Hadestown. And this was actually our dinner on the night we saw Hadestown.
Yeah, and it was really good.
It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal.
You want to take a look at their menu and talk a little bit about the food?
I really, really do.
I do too.
Well, I'm already seeing the dish that you had.
Yeah.
Which was the seitan marsala.
It was so good. And it's not something normally I would order. It was, I kind of like, I don't know, I deviated from the norm when I ordered that.
Well, we both did, because I went with their chicken pot pie.
That's right. And I think We talked about it in the
New York episode.
Yeah, which we just dropped a replay of like 5 episodes back. So.
Yep. And they've got all kinds of beautiful things. Yeah. Starters, they've got a Colombian potato soup and a seasonal soup, which right now is Italian wedding soup.
Yum.
The Krabby Cakes, which we had.
Yeah, they were good.
They were. Their Krabby Cakes are a combination of chickpeas, artichokes, and hearts of palm, chopped onion and garlic with herbed panko breadcrumbs and lemon. And they were beautiful.
Oh, they were delightful. Just these little vegan crab cakes. With a dollop of sauce on top.
Yes, they were
so good.
Absolutely fantastic. They've got a beautiful selection of burgers and sandwiches. Everything from, a Beyond Burger to a crispy chicken Caesar wrap to maitake mushroom sandwich done buffalo style.
Yeah, they do a maitake wings platter too.
Yeah.
Which looks really good with maitake mushrooms. And then you can do it buffalo or barbecue or a sweet Thai chili, which sounds really yummy.
And I don't know how I missed this. I don't know if this wasn't on the menu when we were there, but they have a white bean and asparagus ravioli.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing that.
With a creamy Parmesan sauce.
Yeah.
And it's topped with asparagus and cherry tomatoes. I would have been all over that.
That sounds delish.
It really, really does. And their house salad, I have to say, I got it as an appetizer, as a side salad, and it was the most beautiful side salad I'd ever had.
It wasn't your typical side salad.
It was not.
It was almost like a dinner side salad.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
They've got some beautiful sides, mac and cheese, mashed potatoes, roasted Brussels sprouts, salads, fries, sweet potato fries,
truffle fries.
Yeah. Just absolutely beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Chili cheese fries.
Yeah, but they really are an amazing organization, and we had an amazing meal there. So if you are in the New York City metro area, get thee to PS Kitchen because you really don't want to miss out. They're fantastic.
Yeah, and if you have recently been to PS Kitchen and you support what they do, email us a recent photo of your meal and tell us all about it, and we'll enter you to win a gift card to PS Kitchen.
That's right. We'd like to buy you dinner.
Yeah.
So let us.
We want you to be a dinner winner.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we'll announce the April dinner winner in next week's episode.
Yes, we will.
So get those pictures in. It is time for our favorite portion of the show.
Must be listener shout out time.
It's listener shout out.
Just want to give a shout out to all my fans watching. I love you guys. I love you.
But we're out of shout outs.
Yeah, we are out of shout outs, and I have in the outline, oh, the humanity.
Oh, the humanity. We are out of shout outs.
We are. So if you listen to the show and you haven't reached out, dropped us a line to say, hey, I listen. Here's what I like about the show. Here's what I don't like about the show. Can you shout me out? Can you shout out my girlfriend, my boyfriend, my
dog,
mom, my dog? My dog's having a birthday next week. Can you shout him out? Howl 3 times or something, anything, reach out. Let us know you listen because we really want to thank our wonderful, wonderful listeners.
Yes, we do.
By sending you a Compassion and Cucumbers swag bag because, swag, everybody wants swag.
Of course.
And it's really a sad thing for me when I pull up in my notes thing on my phone, the listener shout outs, and I have run out of them.
Yeah. I am sorry.
It's heartbreaking.
It is.
If you're on our email list, you would have received an email last week imploring you.
Imploring.
To respond
Not
to
just
that.
requesting, imploring.
To respond to that email if you haven't. And, let me know what you think about the show. Also, if there's things you want us to be talking about that we're not talking about, let us know that too.
Oh, yeah.
Totally
open for feedback.
I appreciate any kind of feedback. I just want to know what you think and that you're out there. So I guess it's time to wrap this baby up. But before we go, don't forget, please remember to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Subscribe to our YouTube. Leave us a rating and a review on your app if it lets you do that so we can reach more incredible people like you. If you want to get news about the show, you can subscribe to our weekly newsletter at compassionandcucumbers.com. Yeah, so each week I send out a newsletter letting you know what's coming up on the show, and I also include some fun stuff like our weekly music of the week. I usually drop a song on there that might have something to do with something we're talking about.
It's fun stuff.
It is. It's fun stuff. So if you'd like to get that, go to our website and put in your email and subscribe.
And with that, it's time to sign off. You have just listened to episode 182 of the Compassion and Cucumbers podcast, and there's nothing left to say but where cukes and compassion are always the fashion on the podcast.
Thanks, James.
Have a great week, everyone.
We'll talk to you next Tuesday.
We love you.
We really do. Bye-bye.
The end.
If you'd like to support the Compassion and Cucumbers podcast, well, you can do that by hopping on over to our Patreon page and becoming a patron. We have all the recipes from our vegan kitchen series up there, and we'll be adding some patron-only episodes in the near future. So thank you for supporting us at whatever level that you choose, and thank you again for listening to Compassion and Cucumbers podcast.